Welcome to Christ Table. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege of serving here at Christ Table as lead clergy. If you'd like to know more information about Christ Table, super simple. All you need to do is visit the URL right there, www.christstable.today. Sign up for the email list there so that you'll know everything that's going on around Christ Table. We are here to help navigate, help encourage, help be a resource for those who are disconnected, disillusioned, done with the church, or those people who know someone who is or who are just struggling, wrestling with faith and the direction they want to take. So that's why we are here, and that's why we do these studies. Speaking of that, you can get a free resource to go along with this study, go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. There's a free PDF there at that URL that you can download that'll walk you through background cultural context from each day that we have this study, as well as we'll give you some insight into a few ways to reflect and maybe apply some of the things that we talk about, take the next step. Also, if you would like to have a printed copy of that, we do have those available there as well for you to acquire. All you got to do is click the button there at that URL that says get the box. And we have a box of resources that includes that curriculum in it that we would love to put into your hands. That does help us out. We appreciate that a lot. Also, there is this resource, Reconstructing Your Faith. If you'd like to know more information about this, you can find that at drkevinyoung.com. And if you know someone who is disconnected, disillusioned, done with the church, or who's trying to navigate their journey or has a lot of frustrations, that I think will be a great resource in helping them navigate what steps to take next as they try to figure out the lay of the land and where to go. So we're in this study where we are talking about divine comedy, those places where Jesus uses humor, wit, sarcasm, creativity, comedy in order to get his point across. So much of that is lost in translation because we don't know the background or the cultural context of what's being said there. Jesus relies a lot on situational humor or on context in order to present things in such a way that is engaging and oftentimes funny or awkward or insightful. So today our topic is prayer performers. Matthew chapter 6 verses 5 and 6 is where we're going to go here. And it probably won't take much for me to put a mind picture in your brain, in the theater of your mind, as to someone who doesn't understand the line between prayer and performance. For many of us, this may well be one of the difficulties that has led us to be disillusioned with the church, is that people who perform rather than pray, pastors who perform rather who handle the pulpit well, folks who are one way in one space, very holy, very sacred, very righteous, bordering on self-righteous, but then in other places that doesn't really seem to match up with how they live everywhere else, and they just don't seem to care. These things can cause many of us to become disillusioned with the faith or disconnected from God, and there is even a danger for all of us, even in faith, that we become more of a performer rather than somebody who is a prayer for the right reasons. This is a topic of conversation that Jesus is not starting, but one which is long-standing by this point when Jesus comes on the scene in the Jewish tradition. In fact, the Talmud discusses proper prayer demeanor and condemns ostentatious prayer. And so there was already this context that Jesus is stepping into that says to those who are a part of Jewish culture or within Judaism of this time that proper prayer demeanor is very important, maybe even more important so than what we give it in Christian circles. It was extremely important to have the proper stance, to have the proper demeanor. And it even outright condemns prayer which is ostentatious. But most of us can probably think of those moments in our own context where we have witnessed people who pray in very grandiose or ostentatious ways, oftentimes over meals while the food gets cold, assumedly because they don't pray at any other time, so they have to work it all in during those meal prayers, pray a short prayer of the meal, then pray all those longer prayers for all those needs later, or because they're trying to perform. Oftentimes in prayer groups, in small groups, in church, it will not take you long to find that person who has made prayer an art form in a way that is not as much beautiful as it is something to get attention. And I think that that's a fine line, and there's a danger for all of us of crossing over into that and not necessarily maybe even knowing that we have moved into ostentatious prayer. So Jesus in Matthew chapter 6, verse 5, in context and in tandem with giving the Lord's Prayer, teaching about prayer, says, when you pray, don't be like those hypocrites. And we get it, right? Those hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everybody can see them. Don't be like those people who want to be seen rather than people who are simply doing prayer for the right reasons. I tell you the truth, that's all the reward that they're ever going to get. Thus, implying, maybe not even implying, but directly stating, God is not impressed with this. There will be no reward on the other side for that kind of prayer. There is nobody at the other end of the heavenly phone call for prayer just waiting with bated breath to answer these prayers that are performances. They're getting the entire reward that they're going to receive ever for this prayer, which isn't an answered prayer. The entire reward that they're going to see here, that they're going to get, is simply in the awe of the people who are tricked into thinking that this is a positive way to pray. And in fact, in a lot of ways, there's a negative reward that comes from praying that way, as people think you're pompous. People most of the time really see through that. You think they don't. You think you are putting on a great show, but people, especially in religion, tend to have a pretty good BS meter for folks who are authentic and folks who are just performing. But when you pray, Jesus says, my followers, if you're going to follow in my footsteps, when you pray, do the best that you can to do it away from anything that is going to be perceived as a performance. Shut the door behind you. Pray to your Father in private, and then your Father, who's going to see everything, will reward you. God sees and hears you no matter where you are. You don't have to do this out in front of everybody in order to be seen. And people are imagining this. In fact, Jesus in another place tells a story about somebody who prays a performance prayer in this way, even pointing to somebody else and saying, oh, I thank God that I am not like, and opens his eye, that guy who's standing right over there. Thank you, God, for blessing me and not letting me become that dude over there. This is ostentatious, but this is also, I think we can say this, sinful prayer. This is not the way prayer is supposed to be. Jesus uses the word hypocrite, which is a very close word and has a very strong connection to a Hebrew word used in the Hebrew text as well as in the Talmud that is translated essentially to mean religious showmanship. And it's fascinating that this word in the Hebrew means painted, colored, or tinted. Whenever something is painted or colored or tinted, you're not seeing the true thing, right? You're seeing something that has been massaged, something that has been enhanced. It's been painted or colored or tinted for show. Dyeing your hair, dyeing your beard. I used to have a really thick beard. I would dye it brown. I was a young guy, but I think probably everybody could tell that that was a dye job on the beard. And at some point I was just like, I'm done. I'm done coloring this. I'm trying to show and be something that I'm not. I'm just going to let it go. And within the space of about a week, it went from dark brown to full and complete gray. And it was quite the change because I was trying to tint it, to color it in order to make people believe that something wasn't true, to hide something from them. And that was probably my own insecurity, right? That I was hiding there. And there was the hypocrisy. I was trying to hide something from other people that I was insecure about by pretending to be something that I wasn't. This is what hypocrisy is. This is what religious showmanship is. And this is what this kind of prayer is, right? Folks who pray in this way are putting on a show, coloring, painting, fixing up on the outside something that is not reflective fully of what's on the inside. They're hiding something, right? Probably because of some insecurity somewhere deep within them that probably needs to be addressed rather than just painted over with a pretty prayer. Prayer, sacred action, is not the thing to utilize in order to avoid dealing with what's going on the inside. Whenever we do that, whenever we try to hide it and be something we're not, we become a hypocrite. And there's nothing worse in Christianity or in any religion or in life, probably, than being a hypocrite. It turns people off. It's why Christ's table needs to exist, and why so many others do as well. It's not okay. So if you'd like to know more about Christ's Table, you can visit that URL, christstable.today. But if you like those study materials, right there, go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. We'd love to get that in your hands and have you join us for the rest of this study, or even go back and do the previous ones. Once we get to the end, they're all archived. It's good to have been with you today. Look forward to being back with you next week as we continue on this study. But until that time, happy reading.